Chris Ockley here in Chesterfield, Missouri, with Ryan Banta, the Parkway Central High School girls head cross country and track coach, and 16 years into his coaching career, and very successful. And he's after 5 years and of work and 763 pages is finally published Sprinter's Compendium. Just everything you could possibly want to know about speed and speed training. And then you go throughout, and then at what point after gaining all this knowledge and continuing to strive for it, did you say, you know what, I've gained all this, let me try to put it all together in one spot so young coaches that want to learn more and become better and make their athletes better, give this an outlet for them to learn, and after all this work that I've done and will continue to do. When did that say, hey, let's try to put this together and write a book?
For me, I was given the opportunity to start writing on a website called EliteTrack.com, and there was a gentleman named Carl Valley who invited me onto that site, and then the owner of the site, Mike Young, who runs Athletic Labs down in North Carolina, provided me that opportunity, and I started writing. And I have a disability in writing. I'm dysgraphic, which means I type faster than I think faster than my hands can type or write. And so when people read some of the stuff that I write, sometimes they're probably like, oh my gosh, like this person's going to write a book. Are you kidding me? Yeah. But it was one of those bucket list items for me where I felt like, there's tons and tons of books out there for distance training, for weightlifting, for Pilates, for sports psychology, coaching, leadership, but there wasn't anything about the X's and O's of sprinting. So believe me, I wasn't arrogant enough to think that I knew it all, but I had gotten to a point where I was at the Olympic Training Center and people were referencing the stuff that I had wrote and didn't realize it was me who they were talking to about the stuff they were referencing. So it was a really scary and exciting moment.
How cool is that?
Yeah, it was cool, but it was also scary, like, oh my God, like I've got to do a better job. I got to make sure what I'm giving these people is accurate, because I don't want to lead them down the wrong path. But it was also exciting because, okay, people are actually reading the stuff. I had no idea, because I don't have the back end of that website and the analytics to know this article is getting a lot of attention versus this one, so that was one of those things where I realized, man, there's something to this. And through the discussions that Carl Valley and I had, we kind of talked back and forth, and we're kind of banging around the idea of like, why hasn't anybody done this?
Right.
And just like when Ken Greathouse said, hey, you should go do this, kind of felt like, okay, that's another signal for me to now go do a book and write a book. And again, a lot of my ideas are in there, but more about my mistakes and how I've learned from those mistakes. And so that way I can do a lot of groundwork for new coaches so they can sit on my shoulders. But more importantly, the contributors, which is over 50 different international and local coaches who've joined that project. And we have coaches at the high school level, the club level, the college level, and the professional level. And so that was kind of my goal, was to get a book that was like the Jack Daniels running formula, but for sprinters.
Right.
And obviously, Jack Daniels running formula is like one of the best sellers of all time.
Yeah.
Most distance coaches reference it at the least, if not cut and paste it at the most.
Yeah.
And I didn't want that necessarily to be the case where there's one method, but I wanted to take a book where there were many methods and many different practitioners of speed who have ideas about the sport, and to provide people a variety, a potpourri, if you will, of training plans and training ideas that best would fit them. So there was someone in the book where they could say, I agree with that person, that fits my philosophy, that fits my environment. All right, now, what can I glean knowledge-wise from this book to make myself a better coach in speed?
Right. And you talk about the contributors. Yeah, I mean, you're talking some of the best minds, in the country, whether Dan Pfaff, just to name a few, Vince Anderson, Brooks Johnson, Raina Ryder, even local legends, Vince Bingham, Jim Carrey, that we're familiar with here in Missouri. What did you find about these guys? And to me, it's just amazing the willingness for coaches to open up and share. I'd say 95% of coaches are willing to share, and they're not just trying to keep stuff to the vest and trying to beat you. They're willing to share their knowledge and information. And what's kind of been that experience of been to be like, to find these other coaches and to have them be open and and share with you, you know.
Well, I would say first of all, the experience has been very humbling. It's really neat that in the world of track and field that coaches are willing to share. You know, it's amazing if you would talk to a football coach or a basketball coach, unless you're really, really good friends with them, the community is much more closed off. Now, not the community of strength and conditioning within football, but, you know, the X's and O's guys and that. And in my experience in other sports, no one is as open as cross-country coaches and track and field coaches.
Right.
And I think what's really cool about that and what lends itself to that openness is the fact that, like, everybody in the race can benefit. Everybody in an event on track and field can benefit. And because there's so many opportunities for success in a race of 8 lanes, you can have good things happen to every one of the people
Right.
in those 8 lanes. You can have a person who's all state. You can have a person who's a state champion. You can have a person who broke a school record. You can have a person who's never made the finals of a state meet. You can have a person who set a new personal best.
Right.
And you go down the list of a litany of different things that people can accomplish. And I think that that's one of the reasons is that everyone can benefit from that greater knowledge. And I think there's a little bit of that Dutch clinic type of attitude that Matt Candrell kind of put together, which is, hey, you bring something here, you share something with me. Someday I'm going to need something from you, and there's always this give and take, and it's a really positive thing.
Right.
And it's been very humbling and surprising in some ways that some of these coaches decided to participate. But I think that that's what makes them such great coaches is their openness, is their willingness to share, and they know that I can give you this workout, I can give you this training plan, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be able to exactly replicate it.
Right.
And my job is to still motivate, to be able to perceive what's going on, to adapt, to adjust to the conditions and things that are there. And what was really cool is when, and I've talked a lot about this situation, so I'm going to give a different thing that I haven't really talked about too much, but was with Gary Winkler. So Gary Winkler is one of those really great Hall of Fame coaches. And I asked him a long time ago, hey, can you give me some of your workouts for a program that I had bought from him? And he gave me those workouts. He gave me, I mean, it was 40 or 50 pages of workout after workout after workout. And the thing that he said, and it really stuck with me, is he said, you may have more questions than answers from this.
Right.
And at the time I was like, well, I just want to see what you're doing. You know, and it's kind of that, again, you know a little bit, but you don't know enough to know what you don't know. And so I'm looking through these workouts, and some of the stuff didn't make sense. But as I've gone through this process over the years of researching and investigating and talking with coaches and people sharing with me, every year I go back to those same documents and those workouts, and more things are revealed to me. I understand what the acronyms mean.
Right.
I understand better where those workouts are supposed to be placed. I understand why he put the workout together in the first place, because there might be a particular kid that this is geared toward for this one problem, or what I would say is an opportunity that we can make that kid better.
Right.
And so that's been the most amazing experience, is being able to look at that stuff. And sometimes you might dismiss some things early on, and then when you get a little bit more knowledgeable in an area or subject, you can go back to it and it solves a riddle for you that was unsolvable, or it connects a dot where there was not even a realization that there needed to be something connected.
Right.
And so I find that to be pretty beautiful.
Right. And what, obviously, you know, 5 years worth of work, and how daunting early on was it, and then what's the relief been to have it done and published, and then now you're thinking, oh, well, then there's a thought of, well, how does it sell? How do I, you know, is this message, you know, getting out there, and are people, you know, enjoying it and taking hold? What's that process been like?
Well, it's been interesting. So, you know, working for MileSplit last year for a very brief stint, and then the process of putting this book together has taught me more about business and marketing than I ever knew in the 30 some odd years of life before I've taken on those two tasks. And I think that everything, if you got to be constantly learning. And so this is now a learning in a different world of how to market, how to sell, how to do the selling of those types of items. And I will tell you this, that it's weird. After 5 years, it became such a regular part of my day to write, to research, or to harass a coach to give me some stuff,
right, yeah.
you know, to put in the book, that I found I've got a little bit more time than I remember. And you find yourself almost kind of being a little itchy, because you were so used to this being part of your daily routine that it feels a little odd. But I would say that it is one of the most satisfying things that I've ever experienced. So if anybody ever wanted to write a book or had a goal of putting something together like this, I would tell you that it's tough and it's a big process, but it is one of the most rewarding experiences you can have when it's done. And by no means is any project going to be perfect. Because of my learning disabilities, there are going to be grammar errors in there, even with 2 editors that have worked over the book. There's still going to be editors because there's certain things that are lost, or issues because there's going to be certain things that are lost in translation. But I think that the project is so vast with so much breadth and depth that I think everybody will find something in the book that is very valuable. And the cool thing is the information there is good and the information there is solid. And if you're a coach in the world of track and field and specifically in the world of sprinting, you can kind of put those things together.
Right.
And it was a bucket list item, as I mentioned earlier, but a lot of people, 5 years, that's a long time.
Yeah.
But because it was a compendium, I wanted to make sure that everything I could put in a book about sprinting was in there. And if I do a version 2, it won't take nearly as long, a second edition. And the cool thing is a lot of that work is still going to be true 10, 15 years from now.
Right.
There are some truths in there that I think a lot of people can benefit from. And so that was really cool. And the whole idea of trying to sell it, that's been a learning experience. Like,
Right.
How do I advertise? Who do I advertise to? When we do these Facebook marketing campaigns, for whatever reason, the Italians love the book and will click on the advertisements at a higher rate and look at the advertisements more than anybody else. And I don't know if that's because I am Italian and have an Italian surname, but they are really into it, and then the certain age level of people, the gender of the people that are looking at the book. There's been some really revealing things that I've learned from that experience that I think going and doing it again would make it even that much easier.
Right.
But right now I'm just really enjoying the opportunity, and it's really given me a nice platform in which to share. And I'll be speaking at the most conferences I've ever spoken at in one single year, and that's really cool too. And not because it's like, hey, look at me, because the book isn't about me. The book
Right.
is about the 50 plus contributors that are in the book, but it's again kind of paying forward the wonderful thing that all these coaches have done for me by allowing me to share their knowledge. And then I feel like my job is kind of to be that synergistic messenger
Right.
of bringing those things together for other people to see, to learn and be hungry, just like I was, decade plus earlier, where I didn't know what I didn't know, but I knew I loved it, and I knew and I enjoyed it, and I knew I wanted to get better.
Right. And what one of the biggest things that you learned throughout this process, or that stood out as you look back, over the last 5 years? Anything that just shocked you or just blew your mind, or was that constantly learning, picking up things from these contributors from all over the world?
Well, the biggest thing is that a lot of people can do a lot of different things and be successful.
Right.
So there really, really is no single solution to the problem of speed. And I think that that's obvious. I think people know that.
Right.
But I think people would be really surprised until they open up the book at how many very different varieties of systems and trainings and methods that can be accomplished to become really good. When I'm presenting in February, I'm presenting at Altus, and the thing that I'm presenting on, the subject is commonalities between, elite speed practitioners. It's going to be pretty tough because
Right.
commonality is there is no commonality.
Right.
The commonality is it all depends. It depends on where you live. It depends on the type of athlete you have. It depends on your environment. It depends on your facilities. It depends on the need of the athlete. It depends on their training age, and on and on and on.
Right.
So that's what's really cool. So I would say that the most eye-opening thing was it really hinges upon the needs of the athletes at that particular time under those conditions, and don't be wedded to a training plan. So even though I have training plans in my book, the idea is the book is to provide you also flexibility. So I'm going
Right.
to give you a scaffolding, but then what you fill within that scaffolding, or what you put on top of that skeleton, is going to look entirely different for your needs. And so that was the big mind-blowing stuff. The success that people could have running a 100-meter dash and doing lots of volume of training
Right.
versus people who could have a lot of success running the 100-meter dash with very little training, and vice versa. Some of those guys who did very little training could still get really good 400s out of people.
Sure.
You know, and it's like, well, these things don't seem to compute.
Right.
But it again depended on their system and how they, the practitioner, them, the craftsman, are able to make it work for their methods and their thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's, not just sprinters or sprint coaches that can benefit, but I know Coach Sean O'Connor, Lafayette said, on the website, if, even if you're a middle distance or super long distance, marathoner, I think even his quote, we all want to get faster no matter what your distance is, and everybody can benefit from that. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And I would go further to say that every sport that involves any kind of running can benefit from the things that are going on in the book, the drills, the mechanics, the methods, the speed, the power, acceleration, absolute speed. Everybody needs that in any sport that involves any kind of running. And the thing is if you're a marathoner, you still want to be faster.
Right.
You
yeah.
want to be more efficient. And if you look at Shaylee Flanagan and you look at her abilities, one of the greatest things about her, and she kind of ushered in that kind of new wave of American distance runners because
Right.
she's had success for a long time. Heck, she's just a little bit younger than me. And she's still making records happen, and she's still doing things that nobody's ever really done, at least not in 40 years
Sure.
in American history, with her marathon win. And she looks very efficient, and she looks very fast, and she has mechanics that are better than a lot of speed power athletes that I see in the NFL.
Right.
So what does that tell you? This person's a marathoner. She has to be as efficient as possible. And so, we joke all the time. People talk about calling, a person who runs a 400, 800 middle distance. I don't call it middle distance.
Right.
They're a long sprinter.
Right.
Because it requires that type of speed and that type of abilities. And as you keep moving up the line, the better athletes still can sprint. When Mo Farah can drop a 50 point on you in the last 400 in a 10K,
Right.
you got to sprint to run with him.
Right.
Or you're just going to get a really nice view for the last 400 meters of a race that you're not going to medal in.
Right.
And so I feel like anybody who buys this book will find things that are applicable to them that they can apply that will make them a better athlete. And I think, Sean O'Connor's been very generous with his help and his comments, and he's obviously a genius. So anything he says, I'll buy into.
Right, right. And I kind of glossed over and made the assumption that, you'd put all this work and this research and then said, hey, let me put it out there for others. But what was the motivation, and what was the motivation to put this book and all this info together, and some of your wisdom and insight and all these 50 contributors, where did that motivation come from?
Yeah, so to kind of dial in that a little bit better, because I know you kind of asked that earlier, the biggest thing for me was I wanted the world to have the benefit of the mentorship and experience that I had. Because I had Sean Burris and Steve Warren and Ken Greathouse in my life, I became a lot better coach. But I consider myself blessed and lucky to have that. Not everyone has that same experience. And not to say that they're going to be blessed by having my book, but that I want coaches to be better, because when people ask you, like, what do you coach? Oh, I coach distance runners. I coach jumpers. I coach football.
Right.
You coach kids.
Yeah.
That's what you coach. And so I want the opportunity for children to have a better experience as an athlete in whatever sport they do, by being faster, by being healthier. And if my book can provide that for coaches, if my book can provide that for sprinters, so that they can get as close to their maximum, to the best of their abilities to get there, that's a beautiful thing. And that's always been kind of the motivation. When I was an athlete, I was hurt all the time. And I always felt like, man, if I would have just had some of the knowledge, or had some of the guidance that I probably needed somebody to whack me over the head a couple times, so let's be honest. But, maybe my experience would have been a little better. Maybe I would have figured out that I need to stop chasing the 100-meter dash and put on, when I put on 25 pounds, I need to go run the 2 and the 4.
Yeah.
Because that's what I was actually meant to do. And through my experiences, I've come to realize that. But maybe there's another athlete that they're out there running the 800, and they should be running the 100. And I want to be able to give that coach that mentorship, even if it's through the pages of a book of people they've never met, to have that opportunity to learn, because ultimately them learning then benefits the athletes they work with. and we would have a better world. And then to take it to a whole nother level, I personally believe that we can still break world records in sprints without performance-enhancing drugs. And one of the reasons that we're being held back is competition amongst a lot of different sports, that everybody's doing a whole bunch of different stuff. But ultimately also really poor coaching and misguided training through some of the people around the country.
Right.
And so I want them to have an opportunity to get better, where they don't have to have that embarrassing conversation at a conference and ask a coach something they're afraid to ask.
Right.
Now they don't have to do it, because in the book, it's answering those questions you have.
Sure.
Somebody's going to give you the answer in the book. If it's Ronna Reeder, Vince Anderson, Dan Path, Sean Burris, Jim Carrey, Vince Bingham, whoever it may be, somebody in that book's got the answer for you, and it's going to make you better, and your kids are going to be better, and we might be able to break some of those world records without drugs.
Right. Well, I haven't gotten my copy yet. I'm excited too, but I'm really excited to dive in and check it out, and I know it'll be a blessing for any coach that gets their hands on it. Tell me, it's on Amazon?
It is. So Vervante is the company that distributed it, and it's they're the print-on-demand company.
Okay.
And so they don't take as much of their pound of flesh as Amazon does. Obviously, a lot of people trust Amazon as a distributor.
Sure.
A little bit more. You can get it on Amazon. The Kindle version is only on Amazon. And so if you want that, I had a professional person put that together, so the Kindle version looks very close to the print version, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And so you can get that, and you don't have to pay for shipping, which a 5-pound book, that's a lot of gasoline on an airplane or on a boat when you're shipping it.
You know, use any of the books for weight training?
Yeah, I mean, you can put them on a sled and
Right.
drive them on down the track and improve your acceleration. And I know, Chris, you said you didn't get the book, but I'll have one for you at the clinic, and anybody else who comes to the Missouri Track and Cross Country Association clinic will have an opportunity to buy the book, and buy the book at a reduced price.
And give us that Vervante website.
Vervante.com. So
VER.
yeah, VERVANTE. And you just type in Sprinter's Compendium and cross-reference it with that company, and it'll be right there. They're very reputable. They're the ones who send it to Amazon anyway.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're getting it from them one way or another, no matter what platform you buy it on. And they've been really awesome and really flexible and tolerant of me and the process of getting the book, and they've done such a great job. And when you get the book, it is a quality book, and people, when you pick that thing up, it is impressive. You know,
Yeah.
it is wow, I can't believe how big and dense this book is. But it's not really meant to be read cover to cover. It's meant to be, here's what I want to get better at. So okay, here's where the chapter is. Here's the coaches that can help you.
Right. Yeah, no, it's exciting to find some of that wisdom from all those contributors and world-class coaches. And anything else to add about the book or the experience and just what the benefits of it, or any last piece to?
Well, the last thing I would say
didn't
is,
ask about that I should have.
Yeah, no, I would say the last thing is, first of all, thank you to everybody who's watching. Thank you to all the coaches who have been so wonderful to bless me with their knowledge and to be a participant in a bucket list item for me, for a kid who would get grounded every time he'd have to try to write an English paper because he hated having to make corrections and the struggles that I have with my writing. So if you're a person out there that has a learning disability or something where you don't have the confidence, you think that you can't do it, but you really would like to do it, there's people out there that will help you, and you can. You just got to be willing to take the time. 5 years might sound like a long time to a teenager. It doesn't sound that long to a middle-aged man. So go out there and get after it. And more importantly, if you guys have any questions, or you ever see something in the book that doesn't jive with what you're saying, I'm an email, text message, Twitter or Facebook account away. You can find me pretty easily, and I want to pay forward, so I'm going to help you out as much as I can. So thank you, Chris.
And more on the book at sprinterscompendium.com.
Yep.
So thanks, Coach. Appreciate the time. Excited to check it out.
Thank you.